Welcome to week two, right? Week two of the apocalypse. What week are we in, Nicole? Do you know?
I think so, yeah. It's been at least 14 days since most of us hopefully have been self isolating.
Okay, 14 days since we've started self isolating here in the New York metro area. I think across the country is a little differently. But basically, we're in week two of the U.S. apocalypse. Love it. How has it been treating you, Nicole?
Catching up on some films, spending quality time with my girlfriend, reading the
Mm,
news and getting scared. It's been overall pretty great.
that's a great way to spend the apocalypse. I think I've been trying to stay as creative as possible, but not really succeeding at that. But that's why we have this podcast, luckily, where we can stay a little bit creative at least, get those
Yes.
creative juices flowing. And today, I hate to break it to you all, but we will be talking about viruses today because today we will be covering 12 Monkeys, a post apocalyptic film about a virus that wipes out humanity, and the movie that inspired it, La Jetée.
Yes, I'm really excited because this is my neck of the woods.
Yes, and Nicole, I'm sure you have a lot to say about La Jetée because I feel like a lot of our listeners probably have never even heard of this movie, so I'm quite
Yeah.
excited. We get to
Yeah,
flex our
12 Monkeys
artistic
was a
muscles.
remake.
I know, right?
Ooh, I
Ah,
love that. Let's flex
yeah,
them.
yeah. So with that said, I'm Rolando,
And I'm Nicole,
and this is Remakes, Reboots, and Revivals
an original podcast about
on
unoriginality.
originality.
So, our audience actually, we did a semi mini poll about what people want to hear, and a lot of people actually want to hear films that have to do with what we're going through right now. And 12
It's
Monkeys
true.
came up more than once, in particular by our old producer Josh. So,
Who is he a listener also?
yes, I hope he is, but he was enough active on our social media to make the request. So, let's just dedicate this to Josh, who's self isolating over in the San Fran area.
Yes. Well, he has a newborn, so I would hope so,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So self isolation. No, it's true. People. It's interesting, right? Because we've been. This is like our second full week of self isolation, and I don't know. It's getting rough out there. And by out there, I mean like it's not so bad outside. To be honest, it's mostly like in the household where it's just rough, right? Like you're just like, what do you do? I don't know
Yeah.
how me and Eddie haven't killed each other, and I'm even, to be honest, I don't know how Eddie hasn't killed me. To be honest, because I will fully admit that I'm the annoying one out of the two of us. I'm the one who constantly
Really?
needs like I need interaction. Like that's even though I work in an office with only like three people, uh, it's nice to interact with other human beings, and the fact that
Yes.
like Eddie works and ignores me while we're during work hours, it drives me bonkers.
Oh
So
my God. Yeah.
yeah,
So we gotta keep our extroverts in mind during this
yeah,
tough times because
yeah.
they're
But so
suffering.
yeah, but self isolation is a little bit of a theme, I guess. Like well, running into hiding is a form of isolation, and that's what happens in both of these two films. So let's kick things off by talking La Jetée. Now I know this film. I don't know the I mean, I should know the history. We've learned it in film school, but you know me, guys. I never pay attention to names and dates. That's why we
Yes.
have that's why we have Nicole here.
Yes. That's literally all I'm good for. So the thing about La Jetée is that it's very much part of the movement of French New Wave, but remarkably different. It's a short film, and some people, including the filmmaker Chris Marker himself, wouldn't even really call it a film. So I'm going to back up in case people don't know about the French New Wave. It came out really like 1959 was their breakthrough year, but a lot of films are coming out before that that led up to it. It made a mark all over the world of these French filmmakers who were rejecting traditional filmmaking conventions, and they were doing experimenting. They were doing experimentations with film. Filmmaking, editing, narrative, all these different things. And a lot of these people who made these films that we know at least, like Rolando, you know Jean-Luc Godard and Francois Truffaut.
I do know, yeah, but I know both of those names.
You do know both those names. Those feel like are the two most famous names that come
Uh huh.
from the French New Wave, and both
Yes.
of those men were film critics before they became filmmakers. They've watched all types of films. They came up with the word auteur, and they studied film, and they considered film to be an art. So they wanted to bring film back to be an art form. So that's why they went to the camera and they started making films.
Have you ever
Um,
seen Truffaut, Hitchcock Truffaut?
yes, and I have the book too. It's really great
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, I have the book too. Wait, did we see it together at film school?
No,
Oh,
I don't
okay.
think so.
Oh no, because that was one of for film school, for grad school, right? That was one of the trips that we had to do, like our field trips and stuff, and that's where I was actually first introduced to Truffaut, and then
Yes.
I started
Oh, really?
watching
That was
some of his movies. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome. Well, Truffaut, when Hitchcock, off topic really quick, but when Hitchcock was alive and still making movies, this was all happened in 1962 when that book came out,
Mhm.
he was in the midst of making The Birds. And people kind of just thought of him as a showman. People didn't really think of him as artistic filmmaker. So Francois Truffaut was the
Right.
first person to be like, hey, this guy whose movies you've been watching for 20 plus years, he's actually a beautiful artist and all this stuff. So blah, blah, blah. So the Cacheuse du Cinéma, which is the magazine that they wrote for, that became a group of filmmakers that went from writing about film to making film. They were called the Right Bank movement, and they were also just called the cinema boys, the Cacheuse du Cinéma guys. There also came a movement in the French wave known as the Left Bank, which were people who did not study film, who were not film critics, but who were interested in other types of art form and bringing it to cinema, mainly poetry, literature, and visual arts.
Mhm.
And this is what Chris Marker falls into. He falls into Left Bank cinema. Two other huge names are Alain Resnais, who did like Hiroshima Mon Amour, and
Mhm.
last year at Marienbad, and Agnes Varda.
Oh, I know Agnes
So
Varda.
yes, I hope some of our listeners know these names, and you guys should look them up and just like take a chance on a French New Wave movie, because they're really fucking interesting movies. So anyway, the Left Bank move, they were less successful, and they were less famous. I feel like film students, they know these names, but other than that, the general public may not know it like they know Truffaut. They were a little bit older, they were a little less crazed about movies, and they saw it as literature and poetry. So Chris Marker always referred to La Jetée as un photoroman, which means a photo novel.
Yes.
And that's because La Jetée, a 28-minute film, consists of black and white photos, music, narration, and sound effects. And the
And
photos repeat. And some of them literally like repeat, like you'll see the same photo twice, but like it just
Mhm.
is like a photo for 5 seconds, another photo for 5 seconds, while you're listening to the music and the narration guide you through this story.
This is the story of a man marked by an image of his childhood. The violent scene which upset him, and whose meaning he was to grasp only years later, happened on the main pier at Orly, Paris airport, sometime before the outbreak of World War III.
So actually, we'll put in the links for there's a French version available online, and I also believe, I have found the English translation available also online. So
Oh
be
wow,
sure to
that's
put
pretty
those on
cool.
those show links. Yeah.
Okay, and it's a really simple story. They had this film, World War III happened, and the aftermath of it leaves people underground, and some of them are struggling to survive, and some of them are actually kept prisoner in the underground by people who are in authority. And so scientists choose this one man to be a prisoner, to be a subject of time travel. And they want to send him either back in time or forward in time, either to find a cure or to ask for help from the future.
So actually, because I had just recently rewatched this, so they send him. Their ultimate goal is to go to the future in order to figure out a way to get them out of right now living underground.
Yes. And they do
uh,
that. They
And
succeed
the reason,
in that.
yeah, and they were doing a series of experiments, and he was the next one up. And what the scientists had figured out, that one of the best ways in order to send someone through time is by having subjects who have like a memory to a certain point in time.
Yeah.
And
Who have
the
like
movie-
almost obsessive memories, right?
Yes, exactly. And then this man, he has an obsessive memory of this time where he was at an airport and he saw this beautiful woman, and the man died before his very eyes.
Yes. So he's obsessed with this memory. And when they do the test and he's sent back in time, he meets that woman.
Correct.
And he falls obviously in love with her.
Yes.
And so it's interesting because he goes back in time, and there's this beautiful series too where they like go on a day trip in Paris and all this stuff, and they go to the museum to look at they like makes it a point to like talk about like looking at the dead animals just standing there lifeless. But it's interesting because you can't really get that through a photograph.
Right. It's true.
So it becomes this like really interesting thing that you're trying to like meditate on, because they themselves are now these dead artifacts that you're kind of staring at. But he gets back to the present, and then they send him to the future, and he gets his mission accomplished. They actually send the past back some stuff. The
Correct.
past is in the present, if that makes sense.
Yes.
But he still is very much fixated on this memory and this woman that he actually met, so he decides that he would like to... Should we spoil it?
I mean, this movie came out, what?
1962.
Yeah, 60 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
70?
So I guess we should 58 years
My math
ago.
is
So
off, yeah.
So
Well, actually,
he actually...
I just wanted. He
Go for
doesn't
it.
necessarily. He doesn't go. He doesn't choose. Well, he does choose. But what happens is, after he is successful with his mission, the scientists are going to kill him. I don't know. They don't really specify why they're going to kill him. He just figures out they're going to kill him, and
Yes.
then the people from the future travel back to the present. It gets a little
That's
wonky.
right. That's right.
But they travel
Yeah.
to the present and offer him a chance for salvation by bringing him to the future and making that like his new timeline because he's a time traveler like them. And instead, he chooses to go to the past in order to be with this woman that he has fallen in love with.
That's right.
And they decide to send him to the past.
Yes, and then
And
I think
the
they send
spoiler
him to
happens.
Orly Airport. Yeah,
Yes.
they send him to the airport, and he approaches the woman that he loves, only to be found by a person who intended to kill him the whole time from his present. And they succeed in killing him, and then he realizes that this memory that he was obsessed with his whole life was actually him witnessing his own death.
Yes.
So
Mind
it's-
blown, right?
Yeah. Well, for 1962, for a film like that, you're just like, whoa, that's a really heavy story to put in photographs in 28 minutes.
I mean, even for 2016, when I think I saw this film for the first time, I was also my mind was blown. And mind you, I had already seen 12 Monkeys, and like, our professor had even told us that like, 12 Monkeys was actually inspired by this movie. So I guess I should have seen that twist happening like a while ago, but like it's good storytelling, right? That's why you drop your guard.
Yeah, well, the reason I feel like too that this always gets shown to film students is because it kind of questions your ideas of what is a film, because you think that a film needs to be a moving picture with sound and all these effects and stuff, but like a film can be any one of these components. You can have a series of photographs and still be a film. You can have a music and a slight narration guide you and still have like a complete story. Like there's different ways to go about stuff, and it really questions like people's ideas of like the rules of filmmaking.
Yes.
Which is also why it's like, I think I'm just so appreciative of it as a film, because overall it's still pretty successful. I mean, you were saying that when you watched it, you were like taken aback and you were like, oh my God, I didn't see that happening.
Right.
And then also story-wise, even though I don't think story is the most important component of a film, and this is something that I know Rolando and I have argued about before on this podcast, but I do think that story-wise, I do think that there's something nice about kind of like that never-ending loop. It's kind of also what time travel is anyway. You start at one point, and then you end up at one point, and then you just go right back to where you started, and that, life is... Sometimes too, it's just like so short and so bleak that you can almost be stuck in like your own loop of existence.
Right.
So it has like so much interesting things to. I mean, yeah, it uses time travel as an excuse to talk about mortality.
I mean, so in theory, this is a causal loop, is what it's called when it comes to time travel movies. And I know this because I try to do time travel for my Dungeons and Dragons group, and let me tell you, time travel is always messy. And I guess they even knew this back then in the 50s, 60s. I keep forgetting. I'm sorry.
It's 62.
62. So even in the 60s, they knew this. Like, time travel is just a mess.
Yeah.
Don't do it, guys. So, yeah.
Yeah, this one I think adheres to the time travel theory that, you are always meant to go back in time and die. Whereas some people think that when you go to the future, you can change the future. But sometimes those theories go together.
So what happens? Well, it's cause and effect, right? Like, in order for you to go to the future, and this is a problem that will come up in 12 Monkeys, but for you to be able to travel back in time, right? The event that you traveled in time to prevent need to happen. Otherwise, you would not have had a reason to travel back in time. So, in this movie, the way that works is in order for him to have been able to travel back in time, he needs to have had that memory of that obsession, that obsessive moment. So, meaning he needed to witness his own death in order for him to have gone back in time. Otherwise, he would never have been able to go back in time. So had
crazy,
he survived,
right?
Yeah, had he survived, depending on depending on which time travel theory you believe, if he went back in time, he would, and he didn't die. Theoretically speaking, one of two things would happen, right? Either the universe in which the World War III started and everyone's living underground disappears, right? And they don't ever find a cure, or he's just creating a new timeline or something. See, time travel is just messy.
Like he's creating like a pocket or something, and then like there's a different like there's almost like a parallel loop of existence, right? Because this is also something they talked about in Harry Potter.
Okay.
Where there's always going to be a Harry and Hermione and Ron who are, you know, going to save Buckbeak and like who are doing that loop forever. Because like they watch themselves right before they disappear.
That was the one with the werewolf, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's just, yeah, it's all sorts of wonky. But film aspect wise of La Jetée, I actually still think it's really successful because not only of the music and the narration, but the sound effects. They use whispering a lot.
Oh, those whispers are so creepy.
Very creepy. I even think the repetition of a lot of the still frames, you know, the familiar, like going somewhere and then coming back to it, almost like the strange loop that you experience as the viewer, that you get to be familiar with, I think is just overall like really successful. And I think repetition's a really important motif in art. I think that's when like a point actually gets across the best, is when you kind of repeat it. So I don't know, that's my opinion. But yeah, I think it's really, really nice. And it's also really funny too, because it's like 1962 and there's this like one shot of the scientists and they look just like the album cover of the Beatles.
What? I don't know the Beatles that well, so I can't.
Oh, really? Like the early cover of the Beatles where they're like all in black and it's like a shadowy background, so you just see their faces. And it's like the four of them in a line. It's like literally like just like a shot from La Jetée. So I've always wondered if the Beatles saw La Jetée and they're like, that should be our album cover. So.
Oh, okay, I know the shot. So this is the future scientists.
Yes.
I see. Okay.
Yes. So.
Well, there's a lot of things that I will argue probably were inspired by La Jetée. If you look at the plot, so the plot itself, you'll see why 12 Monkeys is considered to be derivative of La Jetée. But another one that also comes to mind, though, is, have you ever seen The Time Traveler's Wife?
I have not seen that movie.
Okay, so The Time Traveler's Wife is exactly what it sounds like. Some woman from a very young age through adulthood falls in love with this time traveler that she keeps meeting at different points of his life. So so her story is told chronologically, but if you're watching his story is more like his story chronologically makes little sense, because sometimes I think he may have first met her when she was a teenager, and then he'd see her again because he has no control over how he time travels. It's just like a genetic thing. And then he'll eventually form a relationship with her, though he doesn't meet her, he doesn't see her chronologically as she's witnessing him. So there'll just be points in time where he'll be talking with her it's very similar to, actually, if you remember when we did Watchmen, Dr. Manhattan.
Yes.
How he's he could be everywhere at the same time. And so it's a little weird. This is a wonky script, but this is what I'm saying, though, in terms of this woman, the relationship that she forms with the man. They don't have names, right?
Yeah, no, they don't have names.
It's just guy and not gal, woman. I think it's just woman. The woman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But she comes to just accept the fact that he's a strange visitor. That's what she keeps calling him, my strange visitor who just comes from nowhere. And they end up forming a relationship. So this movie actually is it is mostly a romance story. It's a science fiction romance.
Interesting.
Who
is
doesn't
it
love
successful?
A good science fiction? I think it's successful. I mean, for a 28-minute film. I mean, everyone, you guys are in quarantine right now. I really suggest you guys check this out. It's a good story. It's a good story. We may have spoiled the shit out of it for you guys. So if you do want to check it out, sorry. But I think it still holds up, even knowing the twist at the end.
I think so too. I think it's just so interesting to watch. It's just like, again, just for like the beauty of how they approached it and they told it in the style of the film, the un photoroman.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also one moment that the photo turns into a film, and you see it like in like 24 frames per second. We won't tell you what that is. So if you want to go watch the movie and you want to see that 1 minute where it's actually a film. But yeah, so it won an award when it came out. It won the Prix Jean Vigo award for best short film. And it traveled to some other international film festivals. But other than that, like, you know, it didn't really gain notoriety until film school became a thing. And people who had watched it in their youth and were shown it and saw it, you know, wrote songs and short stories based by it. And then Terry Gilliam, who actually was a member of Monty Python.
Was he really?
Yeah, he was the American member of Monty Python.
I didn't know that. I didn't know they had an American. I don't know much about Monty Python, though, so.
Yeah, Monty Python was 6 people, and mainly Terry Gilliam did a lot of their animation, which is very, I think, synonymous with them.
Mm-hmm.
So he was very much like the creative guy behind the camera, but he was sometimes in the skits. And after they disbanded, he started making movies, and he made movies like in the 80s, like Time Bandits, and he made Brazil, a great fucking movie.
I've never seen Brazil, but I've heard good things.
It might be my favorite Terry Gilliam. The Fisher King he made. Other films he's made in general is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and what's some other Terry Gilliam films that people might be like super familiar with?
I think Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas would be for sure, and 12 Monkeys.
And 12 Monkeys, yeah. Well, in 1995 was when he decided to make 12 Monkeys.
Okay.
And so they took the basis of La Jetée, but I really think that they ran with it, and they made it kind of more adaptable anyway, for kind of like a feature-length narrative film, but 2 for 1995. So the script was written by David and Janet Peoples.
Yeah.
And they set their movie in, it's kind of all over the place, but the main source of at least what happens in 1996. So it's the year after this movie was released, which was kind of like your future.
What a future to behold, right?
Yes. And how La Jetée was more about, you know, the aftermath of a really bad war. 12 Monkeys is about a virus that took toll on humanity, and it devastated humanity so much that in the future they wanted to learn how to send people back in time so that they can find, because they think they found out the people who released the virus to the public, and they want to stop those people from releasing the virus to the public.
We appreciate your volunteering. You're a very good observer, Cole.
Thank you. We have a very advanced program, something very different.
An opportunity to reduce your sentence considerably.
And possibly play an important role in returning the human race to the surface of the Earth.
We want tough-minded people, strong mentally. We've had some misfortunes with unstable types.
For a man in your position, an opportunity not to volunteer could be a real mistake. Definitely a mistake.
So that is the gist of it. It goes all over the place. Like Bruce Willis does all sorts of different time travels in this movie.
Right.
But it's got that Terry Gilliam style too, so it's just like kind of crazy.
I mean,
to say the least.
The best crazy comes from the future. Like the set design, the tools that they use for interrogation. It's like it's a whimsical, steampunkish kind of future that they envisioned. And you know what? I hope that this is where Corona takes us, to be honest.
Oh, God. All right. Everybody calm down on the apocalypse shit.
Well, my favorite memes are like have been those memes where like this is the future that we envisioned. This is the one that we got, and it's like, just showing like all the futures that we've seen from TV or movies. Where it's just like this like action future, and then the real future is just like us overeating, watching TV.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, there's actually a great meme where there's like a guy on a couch like eating chips, and it's like Lazy American, and then in 2020 it's American Hero.
Yeah. See. Yeah.
So, but anyway,
So
so Bruce Willis, yes. So Bruce Willis is the main character, and this was kind of like Bruce Willis' heyday.
Yes, and that's what he's doing. So this is actually a different role for Bruce Willis. Is his heyday, right? Like this is a more muted. It's not an action hero-y kind of role. This is more of a muted perform. Muted is the wrong word. It's less action oriented and more performance oriented.
Yeah, it's definitely more restrained. He's not like playing his usual like smart alley tough guy roles.
Right.
And he really wanted to, like, he's kind of notorious for being like a little shithead, but he really wanted to work with Terry Gilliam, so I think that kind of made him a little bit more grounded in his performance.
He took a pay cut
He did a pay cut
so that way he could work in this film.
Yes, and his character's name is James Cole.
Yep.
James Cole is the subject that they decide to send back in time.
Right.
They send him to World War I.
All right, so let me see if I remember. The first thing. All right, so chronologically, so we see the movie, the first half of this movie, right? We kind of see it to the point where like you're kind of led to believe that maybe, just maybe, Cole is crazy. Right?
Yes.
Because I think that's what makes this movie so interesting, right? Where like for most of the you're believing his story, but then there comes a certain point in the film where you start agreeing with Madeline Stowe. She's a psychiatrist, and maybe, just maybe, he is crazy until you until you finally realize like, oh wait, no, okay, it's all real. This is all reality. Like he's not crazy, but he do play with the idea of sanity. But Cole, the movie basically does start off with him arriving in 1990. And in 1990, or that's one of the bigger, that's where he first time travels, right? Because he's supposed to get to 1996. He ends up getting to 1990. And in 1990, when he realizes he's in the wrong era, though, he's trying to warn the psychiatrists that, like, he's not crazy, that the future brings something dark. No one listens to him. And then eventually he doesn't escape, because what happens is, like, the future is able to bring him time traveling back to the present.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like in the next when they shoot him back to the trying to shoot him to the past, they fuck up and they send him to World War I by accident.
Yes, and that's when the psychiatrist sees a picture of him in World War I.
Yes, eventually the psychiatrist, played by Madeline Stowe.
I'm not sure.
I know her from the show Revenge, where she plays the main antagonist, and she is delicious in that show. I totally forgot that she was in this movie. But she is one of my favorite like TV drama actresses. She's so over the top. It's great. But that's how this character ends up realizing that like his time travel stories are real, because she ends up seeing a photo of him from the World War I trenches. I think if I remember correctly, the picture, he's like reaching out, right? And it's kind of creepy.
Yeah. It's like, and it's also like he just looks so misplaced.
Yes, exactly. Like he's just lost. So that's where she starts like kind of believing into the story.
And they fall in love.
I mean, I don't know if they fell in love as much as they were just in like these hardcore circumstances. I think this is where the story gets a little, for me, starts losing steam a little bit. It's like kind of stuffing in this romance.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't believe necessarily that like Matt, the psychiatrist, would fall in love with Bruce Willis. He's just too crazy.
Yeah, it's just also, it's like in the midst of all of this, really, you're gonna like fall in love? Like that, doesn't that just seem way too complicated?
I know, you're trying to prevent the apocalypse. It's just like, is this really the time to fall in love? And then also, there was also this weird line that she says where she was like, I feel like I've always known you and stuff. It's just like, what are you trying to say? Like, you feel like you've always known him. Like, you thought he was crazy. What are you talking about, girl?
Yeah.
Get it together.
Well, I think that's when they really wanted to just like tie it back to their inspiration, La Jetée.
I see. Okay, that would make sense. But that's only. But yeah, see, like only like diehard La Jetée fans would know that. Like I you know, I mean,
Well,
I
yeah.
saw this movie. The first time I saw this movie, it was way before La Jetée, but still, you know.
Well, true, but if the whole reason for making the movie too is to realize that the person that he saw on the platform being murdered was himself, then you need to have the romance aspect. So yeah, I think that being so tied to La Jetée did kind of put a damper on my viewing experience of their relationship because to me it just didn't make sense.
Which one did you see first, La Jetée or?
No, I saw 12 Monkeys first.
You saw 12 Monkeys first. Okay.
Yeah.
When did you see it when it came out in theaters or like?
No,
after?
how old was I? I was like 7. I saw it after.
I don't. What year did it come out?
1995.
1995. I don't even know how old it was in 1995. Do the math. I guess 8.
8 or 9.
8 or 9. No, I'm 87. 8.
Oh, you were definitely 8. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, just not a type of movie that my fam would be into either.
Right.
But I definitely agree with you. The first half of the film is better than the second half. And that's kind of how I feel about Terry Gilliam in general. I think he like starts off really strong, and then after a while, for me at least, like he just kind of loses me.
Right.
But so in the first half, while he's crazy and he's, they're like, okay, lock him up, and he meets a character, and this character, is called Jeffrey Gaines. Jeffrey Gaines, played by Brad Pitt. And he's another crazy inmate, but they are led to believe that he is the leader of an organization called the 12 Monkeys, and this organization, the 12 Monkeys, or like the tribe of the 12 Monkeys, what were they called?
The Army of the 12 Monkeys.
The Army of the 12 Monkeys.
Yeah.
They are the ones who onset this plague and this virus onto this country and the world.
Right. Yes.
And unfortunately, they were just a patsy. And it turns out that they were not. They were just kind of like people who wanted to start a revolution and some riots and upheaval.
Yeah, they're like your. I hate to say this, but they're almost like Bernie Bros, right?
Oh my god.
It makes it seem like I'm anti-Bernie. I'm not. I'm just saying, like, if I had to hearken into something, it would be Bernie Bros are the closest thing I can think of right now, to be honest. Sorry, guys.
Oh, gee. Only in 2020 can people in their own political party still find conflict within each other. But, yeah, so they're definitely anarchists.
Yes, perfect.
And it turns out
that's the best word to describe them. They are anarchists.
Yes. But it turns out that the virus, and this is something that I think is the most interesting part of this movie, was kind of like manufactured and was like a big business kind of move.
Yes.
And the reason why the airport, in this film at least, plays such an important thing, because in the original La Jetée, and La Jetée in French means the jet, or the jetty.
La Jetée.
But he just kind of like goes back to meet her there.
Isn't that just the runway?
No, the jetty, I mean, yeah, the runway for like the jet.
Yeah.
But the reason why in 12 Monkeys that all takes place in this airport is because he realizes, oh my God, the person who literally has the virus in their hands, or the thing that will be the source for the virus, is at this airport. I have to go stop them.
Right.
And the whole tragedy, of course, is that he's not able to.
Well, he's not able to, but he is able to relay the information to the future. This is where I actually do very much like the ending for this film, because Brad Pitt's character is actually a red herring for the movie, right? Because we're led to believe that Brad Pitt's character in the 12 Monkeys, they're the actual bad guys and stuff. And as we come to learn, right, because he's the son of the man who works at the lab. I think he's the head of the lab, if I remember, that developed the biological warfare. The other interesting twist that happens in this film is that Bruce Willis, as he's talking to Brad Pitt, kind of inspires the idea of the 12 Monkeys. So as you're watching this movie, like when Brad Pitt and Bruce Willis have their standoff in 1996, right, at the party, it's kind of, Brad Pitt says, just like, I got the idea from you. Like, you're the one who inspired all of this. And Bruce Willis's character, Cole, he feels responsibility because had he, again, this is where causality comes into effect. Had he not gone into the past, he never would have given the idea to Brad Pitt's character. And Brad Pitt himself then would not have gone through these lengths in order to release a virus. At least that's what we're led to believe by this point of the movie. It's not until later on where we actually reveal that the real bad guy has always been, what is Peters? Is it not Peters?
I think it is Peters.
It is Peters. Okay, Peters. Okay, good. I was right. So Peters himself is the one who is the real bad guy. He's actually someone that we had seen early in the movie, where he was getting an autograph from the psychiatrist from her book because she was talking about like psychosis. And the two of them were talking and stuff, and there are little hints throughout the film that like he's the real bad guy, but he's the one who ends up escaping the airport with the virus, and he ends up sitting in the airplane next to someone who we come to realize is from the future. And I think that's one of my favorite scenes where she sits next to him and like she's like, he asks her like, so what do you do? And she's just like, insurance, which is great because she's the insurance policy in order to prevent the devastation from the future.
Yes.
And it's one of my favorite so it is a happy ending ish, I suppose.
Of sorts, yes, because so it kind of leaves you with, okay, so the virus was never going to be prevented, but maybe measures taken by people in charge can help contain it.
Right.
It's kind of like this weird in-between ending where it's just like, oh, it's the tragedy ending, but then a little twinge of a happy ending on top of it. Yeah, but for me, it leaves it with like the virus will happen, but now they can contain it. That's what I'm left with.
The thing is, so the other thing with this ending that also makes it tragic is where in La Jetée, the woman never realizes that he was a time traveler and that like he was coming from the past and like all that stuff. In this one, he had explained to her that he had witnessed someone die at an airport and stuff, and there was a blonde woman, right? She was wearing a wig because they were trying to be in disguise. And her character puts the pieces together that he witnessed his own death, and then she makes eye contact with a young James Cole, and there's something. It's a tragic. Oh wait, is it? It was young James Cole. Yeah.
Young James Cole. Yeah.
I was about to say because wait, does that make sense time wise? But no, it does. It does. It tracks.
Yeah. Well, it's also like if he's telling you a memory, even though I didn't rewatch the film, but
wow.
Did you?
Shame. Yes.
Oh, good for you.
That's why everything is so fresh in my memory.
Did he tell her before she bought the wig, or was it when he saw the wig? He's like, "Oh my god, the blonde wig from my memory." Did she like know that the blonde wig was always a component?
No, the blonde wig was not like what's it called. She didn't. So she knew about the blonde wig already because like the moment there's a reveal where she comes out in that blonde wig, the light. It's very similar to what's that Hitchcock movie? Is it Rear Window?
What about the blonde wig though?
Vertigo. Vertigo's the one where the lady is dressing up as like the past love, right? Because like that's the only way. Okay, yeah. So all right, so this scene is very much inspired by Vertigo, where she comes out of the bathroom wearing the wig and stuff, dressed up as a blonde lady and stuff. And this is kind of the moment where they kind of have like their romance kind of solidified a little here. Yeah. So, but no, she, I don't know if she, I actually don't remember now off the top of my head if she knew that he witnessed a blonde woman. I think so. I'm pretty sure like blonde was always a blonde. Like she knew. But like also because she's a dark haired lady, she has a beautiful dark hair. So she needed, so what's the opposite? Go platinum blonde.
Go platinum blonde, yeah. I guess it was inevitable.
The best part is my favorite thing is like it's a bad blonde wig because the memory that like James Cole has is like of this beautiful blonde hair that looks real, and then like when they do the actual real scene, like the hair is so ratty and like ugly.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it's that's the one thing. The ending is still like the rest of the movie is kind of like wonky and all this stuff, but the ending is really strong, I would say. It all builds to a really nice climax.
I mean, in terms of like, it does get wonky because I just rewatched. Why the hell does he kidnap her? He kidnaps her, and in an attempt to like solve what's it called? To kind of, I think for when he starts figuring out that Peters is the one responsible, he's trying to figure out how to get the message to the future.
So he kidnaps her.
He kidnaps her, yeah. Like what's it called? They're like hiding out in a hotel room. This is where they start forming like their friendship. There was the other. So here's another weird scene that happened in the movie. I don't know if you remember it, but in the film, he ends up running into like a homeless person, and the homeless person is telling him about how in the what's it called? They're keeping track of you with your fillings, your teeth. Oh, that's your teeth fillings, right? They know about you. Which is weird, right? It's almost implied that like this homeless man, maybe he's like a remnant of someone from the past and from the future that they sent to the past.
Oh shit! Yeah.
Do you remember this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
And yet, when Madeline Stowe's character finds him later in the film, right, and she asks him like, "How did you know? Where is he? The homeless man? He has no idea what she's talking about, right?" So it was just a weird scene where, again, I don't know. This is where I guess from a screenwriting perspective is just like it's kind of like bad writing because it's just like, okay, so is he or is he not? You can't have it both ways.
True. I mean, he could have also just been somebody who observed things, and maybe this has happened before, and he like was always just like sitting there in the alley, and it always happened there. But
then why did
that's a long shot.
Why did he forget?
Yeah.
You know,
that's a little weird.
This is just it's just like and there's just like those little plot holes that this film does have that, you know, make zero sense. Like, for example, I mean, his mission, like Cole's mission was in order, I don't think it was to prevent the apocalypse. It was in order to get them a sample in order to find a cure.
Yes.
Right? It wasn't to prevent the apocalypse. It was to get a sample and stuff. But I think he ends up trying. So I think if I remember correctly, he ends up trying to prevent the apocalypse. But again, cause the causal loop. What happens is if he prevents the apocalypse, there would be no future for him to have time travel to prevent it. So, you know, again, basically what I'm saying, time travel is weird, man.
It is. It's yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, in terms of plot, like I said, there's some holes, but overall, it's a strong plot, and I think they borrow some of the best parts of La Jetée.
Yeah.
In order to get this plot across. But let's talk a little bit about like design, because I think for me, I mean, the future designs are probably the best part, the most captivating things.
Mm-hmm.
But what are your feelings on overall aesthetics for the film and stuff in terms of editing? Because you're an editor.
Yeah, well, I've always considered, first of all, in terms of style, I always considered Terry Gilliam to be expressionist.
Okay.
And I guess the way that I would at least categorize expressionist art is that like it is not how the world looks to everyone else. It is how the world kind of like looks to you in your own perspective. And so the world then becomes a reflection of how you view it. So like Tim Burton's really big on this. Like his worlds look like really Tim Burton-y. You can't even describe how it looks. It's more gothic and more like Art Deco style. So Terry Gilliam to me has his own weird style where you say like kind of steampunky, where it's kind of like a beautiful blending of things from the past and just bizarre things from the future.
Right.
Like that one moment where they're with him and they're like in what is it, Hawaii, or like they're in a tropical island and they're like trying to make it seem like he's like in a tropical beach. They have the art is hanging up over him and they're talking to him and it's all from his perspective. So their faces are in front of it. So then they're able to like make it seem like they're in like a scene. Like, oh, we're not in like a doctor's laboratory. We're here in this island or whatever. These are some of
the interrogations.
Yes. So these are some of the scenes that I think really stand out with me, other than like the scenes that kind of like look like a non-June Pike art exhibit where it's like all these like televisions on top of each other, you know. So it's just like this beautiful blending of kind of like dated product of their genre, like really 80s and 90s things, but like it's supposed to be the future. I think that like Terry Gilliam does beautifully too to create his own sort of like expressionist world.
Right.
So I think he's really good at that. I think that he knows how to get good performances. I think that overall performances are really good. And yeah, I do think that like there's a bunch of Dutch angles where angles are shot on a side and like, you know, like the perspective that they take with like someone when they're looking at each other and like how like you like one person's like really in the front of the angle and then like the other person's off to like the distant left of it.
And I think the reason those angles tend to work in this film is actually because, again, I argue that like there's a point like in the film where you're just supposed to feel like it's just like Bruce Willis. I think he's just crazy. Like maybe we're just watching the movie of almost like A Beautiful Mind, where you're supposed to believe these stories and then you realize like, oh my God, he's just a lunatic. What am I doing? I fell for such a trick. Same here, right? Except there's the payoff is that no, he's serious. That's what makes it sci-fi. This is all true. This is all just a fucked up.
Yeah, and he's not
story.
crazy. The world is crazy.
Exactly. So. There you go. Perfect saying. And you're right. Terry Gilliam did get like very, very strong performances. I mean, Brad Pitt was nominated for an Oscar for this role.
Yeah. It's a little weird.
You think
it's
so?
Not
I actually think
my favorite Brad Pitt.
So this is, in retrospect, one of my favorite Brad Pitt performances because I guess I'm so used to seeing Brad Pitt as like the pretty boy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like I've said this many times before on the podcast, and I'll say it again. He's not one of my favorite actors, but rewatching this one, I was realizing it's just like, oh, Brad Pitt is good. Like he played crazy well. And there's a rumor that the way that he got this performance from Brad Pitt was by taking away his cigarettes for the shoot because Brad Pitt was a smoker. So that's how apparently. Oh yeah, rumor has it that this is how he was able to get like that kind of like almost a little craze. Brad Pitt, he was on nicotine withdrawals.
Oh shit.
Anymore, it's all automated. What are we for then? We're consumers, Jim. Okay. Buy a lot of stuff. You're a good citizen. But if you don't buy a lot of stuff, what are you then? I ask you. What? Mentally ill. Back, Jim, back. If you don't buy things, toilet paper, new cars, computerized blenders, electrically operated sexual devices, stereo systems with brain-implanted headphones, screwdrivers, miniature built-in radar devices, voice-activated computers.
Take it easy, Jeffrey. Be calm.
Yeah, a lot of people think that directors have the right to like control actors like that for the good of the performance. I'm not one who technically believes in that, but that's interesting. I mean, that's a good move because you're at least helping someone stop smoking.
I don't know where I stand on that because
there's
Hitchcock
definitely
said,
a line.
I mean, Hitchcock said that, actors are just sheep.
Yeah, actors are cattle.
Actors are cattle. Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah,
yes, actors are cattle. And I feel like if, you got to do what you got to do to make a strong movie. And Terry Gilliam, he did that. He was able to get these really strong performances from everybody. But obviously, specifically, the standout, I think, for me was Brad Pitt and Bruce Willis. I think it's so funny, right? Bruce Willis might have been a little outshined by Brad Pitt's like erratic performance, but I think Bruce. I was about to say Bruce Wayne. Willis, thank you. Bruce Willis did a great job in this film. Because it was just so different from what we've seen up until this point.
Yeah, that's what's so nice about this movie is that it's almost like, Bruce is definitely not someone you see as muted as he is in this movie, and Brad is not someone that you see someone as crazy as he is. So it's a nice like role reversal for both of them.
Yeah, for sure.
So this movie is worth checking out if you're just like a person who's into performances, and a lot of people who watch movies, they just really like performances. They don't care as much for like story and for shots and for editing and all this stuff. So I think this movie has something for everyone. If like whatever it is you're into, I think it's to a degree pleasing in all aspects.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's wonderfully, beautifully dated, and I think it's almost like supposed to be. Like I think that's one of the things that Terry Gilliam knows is that in 20 years this film will be dated. So I'm like, just fuck it, let me embrace it, and that's what makes it like so interesting, visually and aesthetically.
I agree.
And obviously, now in 2020, people are like looking at this movie and they're talking about this movie because I think that the ending, as we discussed, is something that is interesting when it comes to a virus that happens in society and government response and how can we prevent it, and then when we can't prevent it, how do we approach it. I think this movie has led a lot of people to some conspiracy theories about COVID-19 in 2020.
These conspiracy theorists.
I mean, then there's people who don't have conspiracy theories, and then there's people who are just like, okay, our government doesn't care about us, right? So like it's just also bringing up like a lot of definitely.
It's not that our government doesn't care about us; it's our administration doesn't care about us. But that's just my opinion. No, the one of my favorite conspiracy theories though that I was reading is like this social media influencer says that COVID-19 was caused by 5G, and I just wanted to just text him, you know, or DM him, slide into his DM, and just tell him, just like, boy, just stick to just doing the shirtless photos, you know. Stop trying to peddle this garbage.
Yeah, one of the theories.
You're pretty to
is
look at.
5G.
You're not. I don't want to hear you. 5G. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I can believe it because a lot of people think that too. That this is all like a mass hoax, so that the government can put more and more like privacy. Like more cameras and more ways to violate our privacy while this is happening. So like schools will be implemented with cameras and with microphones, and that they'll come up with new ways for our money so that people don't have to touch, and it will be like chips, and then, you know, we'll have all of our privacy rights violated. Like a lot of people think that that's going to happen.
I mean, our privacy's already just been taken because of corporations. So the government would just be one more entity that has it, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of my favorite, what were you going to say?
No, that's it.
Oh, okay. One of my favorite theories that I'm like kind of like on the fence with is that this is like a way for people who are like in power, who have done bad things, to kind of like have their reputations intact, but like be tried for the bad things that they did.
What?
Yeah, so this one's gonna like really throw you on the loop, Rolando, but so like some people, if you research things like Pizzagate and stuff, you know, it's known that Tom Hanks is a pedophile. And now that Tom Hanks has coronavirus, they're thinking that maybe if he dies, this is all a way for him to actually die for his crimes of pedophilia, and so that he can keep his profile in good standing with the public.
Wow,
and that other people of big standings, like this is why Justin Trudeau has it. This is why the prince, one of the royal family members, have it. This is why other famous people will come out with it, you know. So it's very interesting, isn't it?
I can't believe we're peddling this nonsense. Especially the fact that we dropped the word Pizzagate onto our podcast makes me so angry, because Pizzagate is so debunked, but whatever. You know what? Conspiracy theories. And that, I think, are we feeding into these conspiracy theories now when we watch movies like this, though? Because
well,
I mean,
of
the conspiracy
course,
in this film is what's it called? I mean, I would say the big conspiracy in this film is just like how government has, and we say government. I mean, I'm assuming it's the government that's trying to go to the past and like kind of figure out a cure for this disease, right? This is like their solution, but like they have no regard for life, right? Like they treat these characters, and this is in both films, La Jetée and 12 Monkeys, but they treat these characters like you know, like just cattle. Like they're expendable.
Definitely. Well, it's also like in this movie, you know, who's the one who created this myth about the army of the 12 monkeys are responsible for the virus? It definitely seems like to me the people in power are the ones who created this myth so that it will turn away from the actual thing and bring people even further from the actual truth. And that definitely just reeks of, you know, a lying authoritative power.
Right. That's true. Fair.
And so that's why if you know, this movie is highly influential for people who watch it, and then, you know, look at our own government and our poor response to it, because overall it's, you know, we haven't had a great response. And think about, you disagree? You think our response has been
No, I agree wholeheartedly. Like our response was definitely lax, and we just waited to the very last minute, and I don't know. We got some rough seas ahead if the administration decides to try to open us all back up by Easter. So
yeah, I wonder if that can be defied by the states.
We're gonna be. I think. I mean, he can't federally. I don't know. I can't say. I'm talking out my ass at that point. But hopefully, I mean, I don't know. Would you be comfortable living underground if the virus takes over? We're stuck at home right now, right? So like, the question is like, would we be willing to move underground in order to prevent this virus from killing us?
Well, I mean, that wouldn't even be able to become a thing until a long time from now. So I haven't even really thought about that. I don't know. I'm just kind of taking it week by week over here, but Maybe. I guess. I don't know. Would I rather live or would I rather not see sunlight? Gee, what a dilemma.
I mean, so many of us, I feel like, already rarely see sunlight. So
Yeah. So it's like,
what are we really missing? Just take some vitamin D, guys, you know?
or maybe we can just do like a big Wall-E thing and like build a spaceship and just like go travel in space for a little bit and then come back.
Oh, yeah. Let's bring the disease that is humanity to the outer reaches of space.
Yeah.
That's what we should be doing. Oh, yeah. I'm against that. But okay, cool. We'd be remiss though, guys, to say that this is not 12 Monkeys is the only thing that's derivative of La Jetée. Well, because 12 Monkeys itself has a reboot of sorts.
It did.
It was a TV show on Sci-Fi Channel. We actually chose not to do this because we wanted to just talk about these two films, but there is a show on Sci-Fi Channel. Eddie has seen it, and Eddie is not with us, but he did say that he stopped watching it because the time travel gets too confusing.
As is the friggin' thesis statement of this episode, I swear.
Right.
Time travel is just convoluted. And
So, but if you've watched the show, let us know what you think of it, and not that I'm by no means am I promising that we're going to cover this because we have too many shows to watch for this podcast. So, but
we do.
We'll share
and
your
in general,
thoughts.
I don't think that, especially La Jetée, maybe 12 Monkeys, just because they had to expand it, and by expanding it, complicated the narrative so much. But I don't even think La Jetée is really about time travel. I think it's about a meditation on this man's existence and how he kind of lives in this unfortunate loop of watching himself die and then growing up to die in front of himself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just more, and like, because 12 Monkeys does end that way too, I do think it's more of like, even though they, I don't think they make it as much as like a character film and a character study on James Cole.
No.
But I do think that at the end of it too, it is like, oh, the tragedy of this poor man whose whole life has just been like living in these unfortunate, loops and watching himself die. I think La Jetée is more poignant with it, obviously.
I would agree, yeah.
And I definitely think that that's like the one, like, time travel is the MacGuffin in a way, where it's just like there in order to tell the story, and let's not think about it too much because what the real story is about, this man and his weird existential loop that he lives in.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree with you.
So definitely, if you have the chance, I think it's in the show notes, go watch La Jetée.
Yeah, definitely. I recommend La Jetée. It's like less than a half hour.
Yes, definitely. Or if you want to get into a bigger COVID-19 hole, watch 12 Monkeys.
If you haven't watched it yet.
If you haven't watched it yet, it's a good movie, but it's gonna make you. It's a bad time to watch it because of the virus. But it's also a good time to watch it, I guess, if you're that type of person.
It makes us hopeful that COVID-19 will lead to time travel.
It's a really complicated, can't understand it, time travel.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, maybe we can watch ourselves die, guys.
Oh, the dream. The dream.
Seriously. Oh my God, how
means
poetic.
That means that we would need to have at least by now witnessed our death at one point or another. I cannot say that I've witnessed anyone dying, so I think I'd be out. I'm out.
No,
Sorry,
I don't have
guys.
any obsessive memories, so...
Oh, I have plenty of obsessive memories. All these memories would be of me like doing something incredibly embarrassing and having to live with it to this day.
Oh, gee. Yeah, maybe that person who embarrassed you in your youth was actually you all along.
Oh my God! Imagine. Oh, there you go.
That'd be so fucked up.
That's the remake we need.
Yeah.
It's so relatable. But,
yeah.
But all right. Well, I think that's it for now. Unless you have anything else to say, we can't. We can't say was this remake needed because they're so different. But
yes, it was so original.
And yeah, both of them, they're all very original in their own rights.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But let us know what you guys think. You can always reach out to us via social media. You can find us on Instagram. Our handle is Remakes, Reboots, Revivals. You can also find us on Facebook by searching for Remakes, Reboots, and Revivals. And you can also shoot us an email at remakesrebootsrevivals@gmail.com.
Yes, and if you enjoy our podcast, leave us a review. Let us know how you think. Those always help us out. Let us get new listeners and stuff. So if you can, please do it.
And I think that's it for us on this end.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess until next time. Stay unoriginal.